Welcome to the training video for Humanities Advocacy Day. My name is Beatrice Gerwitz, and I'm the Deputy Director of the National Humanities Alliance. I'm here with my colleague, Alex Klein, who's our Communications Manager. By viewing this video in advance of Humanities Advocacy Day, we hope that you can get a head start on preparing for your upcoming meetings. We start here with an overview of the current funding landscape for humanities programs and a rundown of the budget and appropriations process that is unfolding. At our annual meeting on March 8th and 9th, we will offer an up-to-date appraisal of the current legislative landscape and discuss how to shape Hill meetings accordingly. Our Humanities Policy Priorities booklet offers a more comprehensive view of the funding trajectory of each program. And then we'll offer some tips on how to prepare for and conduct effective meetings.
Last December, after several delays and continuing resolutions, the NEH received $162.25 million in the FY 2020 spending bills. That number is significant because it is the largest increase the NEH has seen in a decade. This coming year, we will be pushing for $170 million. For the most part, our other priorities fared well in FY 2020. The Institute of Museum and Library Services received an increase, as did the Department of Education's international education programs, though those increases remained fairly small. Unfortunately, the National Archives operating budget was decreased for the second year in a row, though the National Historic Publications and Records Commission, the grant-giving arm of the archives, did receive an increase. In early February, for the fourth time in a row, President Trump released the Presidential Budget Request, which proposed the orderly shutdown of the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Institute for Museum and Library Services, and zeroed out the budgets for the National Historical Publications and Records Commission and the Department of Education's Title VI and Fulbright-Hays programs. However, we remain optimistic that given the strong bipartisan support our priorities have in both the House and the Senate, we will see more favorable numbers during the appropriations process. In both the House and the Senate, the Appropriations Committees have 12 subcommittees, each charged with drafting appropriation bills funding the programs under its jurisdiction. Each subcommittee has an allotted amount of funding, and it cannot exceed this top-line number in drafting its bill. As each subcommittee evaluates how to use its allotted funding, it will hold hearings about programs under their jurisdiction and receive input from members of Congress who do not sit on the subcommittee.
One way that those who sit on appropriations subcommittees receive input from other members of Congress is through Dear Colleague letters. These letters, which are circulated by members of Congress, ask their fellow members to sign on to appropriations requests. For example, the Congressional Humanities Caucus co-chairs, Representative David Price of North Carolina and Representative Steve Stivers of Ohio, generally circulate a letter asking their colleagues to sign on to a letter supporting a certain amount of funding for the NEH. This letter will likely be circulating by Humanities Advocacy Day, and we will ask you to encourage members of Congress to sign on. There's generally a comparable letter in the Senate for NEH and comparable Title VI letters in the House and the Senate that we also plan to circulate. There may also be letters for our other priorities as well. After all of the funding requests are submitted, each of the 12 subcommittees get to work drafting their individual bills. These bills must stay within the overall funding allocations agreed to in the full committee, so, at this point in the process, members try to balance competing priorities within a fixed number. Funding for the NEH originates in the Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies, while the Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies determines funding for Title VI and IMLS. The Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government determines funding for the National Archives and NHPRC. A key goal is to get favorable funding levels for our priorities into the subcommittee's draft bills, and the Dear Colleague letters can help us achieve this. From there, changes can be made in the full House and Senate committees, on the House or Senate floor when bills come to a vote, or when the House and Senate conference their bills to resolve differences. That said, it becomes progressively more difficult to make changes after the draft bills pass the subcommittee and begin to work their way towards passage in both chambers. Therefore, the Dear Colleague letters can influence the process at a critical stage.
We've emailed you several resources and will have hard copies available when you join us in March. The first is the Advocacy Guide, which offers information on preparing for Hill meetings, how to conduct the meetings themselves, and suggestions for following up after. We will send you a schedule of meetings with the names of the members of Congress or staffer you will be meeting with a week before Humanities Advocacy Day. You also have links to our Humanities Policy Priorities booklet, which offers information about our funding priorities: NEH, Title VI and Fulbright-Hays, the National Archives, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the Library of Congress. The brochure includes our requests for this year and talking points for each priority. The issues you focus on will depend on your own background and on the member you are meeting. We do not expect you to cover all issue areas in one meeting. Finally, we have sent a link to our NEH for All brochure, which digs into some of the NEH's programs. Both the Humanities Policy Priorities booklet and the NEH for All brochure are also intended to be used as handouts to congressional offices. During the week before the meeting, you will receive the member profiles of the members of Congress that you will be meeting with. These will indicate which issues it makes most sense to cover in each meeting. They will also offer a basic overview of the members' backgrounds and policy positions.
When you meet with members of Congress or their staff, it's always helpful to share information about grants to the district or the state. If you live in the district and were a grant recipient, please highlight your grant in the meeting. If not, you can use the NEH and Title VI websites to research grants given in the district. It may be helpful to pull out particular grants to mention in the meeting. On the NEH website, you can navigate to the grants database by starting at the homepage and clicking on Grants at the top of the screen. On the next page, click on Search All Past Awards. This will take you to a web form that allows you to enter a state and district number, allowing you to search for grants in a particular district. Previously funded Title VI and Fulbright-Hays grants, meanwhile, can be found by scrolling down a bit at iris.ed.gov. Here, an advanced search will be necessary to search by state. Unfortunately, searching by congressional district is not possible. It might also be helpful to look for National Archives facilities in your state or district. You can find a full list of National Archives facilities and presidential libraries and their locations at archives.gov/locations. We also encourage you to take a look at nehforall.org. It allows you to search for grants by impact area and state. Featured impact areas include K-12 education, rural programming, veterans programming, and cutting-edge research. It will help you connect NEH grants with the members' policy interests. Our member profiles are designed to help you decide which arguments and grant examples will be most compelling to particular members of Congress. Between the information provided on the member profiles and their own web pages, you should be able to identify a few issues that the member cares about and that may intersect with projects the NEH is funding, even if not in their particular district.
Given where we are in the appropriations process, you will have 4 key goals for your meetings. 1, to show why federal funding for the humanities is important nationally or to the member's district. 2, to gauge their support for the programs. 3, to make a specific request for action. And 4, to build a relationship. You will either meet with the member of Congress or a staff member. In the Advocacy Guide, we give an overview of each staff position. It's best to think of these meetings as a conversation like any other. There's no need to inundate it with information to make the point. Connecting with a staffer or member of Congress around shared interests lays the groundwork for advocacy. Next, it's time to make your case for the programs. The fundamental task here is connecting your knowledge of the programs with the interests of the member of Congress. If, for example, the member shows a clear interest in veterans issues, you can highlight the work that the NEH has been doing for veterans. If the member is a part of the Historical Preservation Caucus, you could focus on the work that the NEH supports in this area. Again, nehforall.org is a great resource for in-depth grant profiles on a wide variety of subjects. It's always good to have a local case based on grants that have gone to the district as well. In most situations, the member or staffer will ask polite questions. Once in a while, there will be a challenging question from those skeptical about why the federal government should be investing in these programs. A few suggested responses can be found in the Meetings section of the Advocacy Guide. After you've explained why the NEH is important nationally or locally, you can move on to concrete requests. The member profiles will suggest specific requests appropriate for individual members given their committee assignments, interests, and level of support for the humanities. During the annual meeting on March 9th, we will also address what requests to make to reflect the rapidly evolving political and fiscal landscape. If you have any questions about what requests might be best for a particular member, please ask us at the meeting on March 9th or at the way stations before your meetings on March 10th. As you finish up the meeting, you can offer to follow up in several ways, including over email about the Dear Colleague letter, inviting them to an event in the district, or promising more information about a program you discussed during your meeting. Finally, be sure to thank them for their time and get a business card.
After the meeting, there are a few things you can do to increase the impact of your visit. First, fill out a post-visit worksheet about how the meeting went so that we can follow up with the office as necessary. It's also a good idea to tweet at the member thanking them for the meeting, perhaps with a picture of you and the staffer. The member's Twitter handle is on their profile. In the following day or two, send a follow-up email with any information you promised during the meeting. We will send out resources to help with follow-up emails the day after Humanities Advocacy Day. Finally, try to keep in touch with the office. For example, you can email the staffer you met to let them know about a new grant your institution receives, or to share the results of an existing grant. At the annual meeting, we will have copies of our District Advocacy Guide, which offers helpful tips for engaging with members of Congress on a local level.
To see our video showing how all of these components come together, please check out the companion video we sent in the email. And don't hesitate to contact us with questions. Thank you for viewing, and we look forward to seeing you soon.